Okay, well, we're back here. Last time we talked about principles of science, the scientific method, and uh, critical reasoning, and the importance of it in a study of geography and the sciences. Today we're going to start talking about what is geography. It's a subject you've heard about for many years, has a long and storied past. So, geography comes from the Latin, means writing about the earth. Okay, it's more than just maps. Well, maps are an essential tool of geography. It's more than about different maps, map types. It's more than just reciting capitals, countries, rivers, and the likes. Though that is important too. Cities and countries and the rivers and landforms, that's an important part of it. May have heard of the National Geographic Society, paying for the magazine and the documentaries. Established in 1888, and it is all about geography. Even though they have all of these different subjects of science, technology, different cultures and societies, archaeology, it all comes down to geography. Our study of the earth, how it's used, how are things distributed, where things are at. And so the National Geographic Society in particular was created to spread knowledge about the world and has been doing so for very many years. So some of the maps in some of the rooms, those are National Geographic maps. Of course, there are different subdisciplines in geography, and there are different um, uh, emphases. But among other things, you talk about geography is the idea of spatial variation. Spatial variation. It's the idea that how are different areas used? How are they distributed? How do people use certain areas? How does nature use them? How are they formed? It's the how and why things vary from one area to another in terms of environment and human uses. So one popular subdivision of a geography is simply looking at how things are built, spaced, spread about. Some maps show major highways. That's a system of geography, basically transportation systems, where people are located, different sized cities, and even maps of where certain factories and are located, where theme parks are located, where gas stations are located. Actually, you look at a map on some websites, they'll show you maps of where all their stores' locations are at, or within the number of stores they have within a 100-mile radius. That's an example of spatial variation. Another example of spatial variation on the physical end of geography is where the mountain's located, where the river's located. How is something at different points on the earth, how are they different from each other? Where are certain mineral resources located? And so that's especially important for this area since we're so heavily dependent on ideas like the natural resource extraction industries, lithium and oil, Where is the oil located? Where is lithium located? Where are all the major forests located for the timber industry? Again, spatial variation. Two types of spatial variation: nature and human uses. Terrain, the climate, the resources. And human uses: economic, transportation, political distribution. For example, the economic distribution, we see the differing incomes of people in a certain area. One in town, people are poorer than others. One in town, you have the higher end district. Political will be, since this is an election year, 2024, we will be inundated with maps on where particular voters are located. The red states versus the blue states. That's a different example of spatial variation, but kind of dives into political science also. But why are these certain voters in certain areas? Why, for example, is our rural areas tend to be more Republican, urban areas tend to be more Democratic. Um, just looking at where, but then asking the question, why? Distribution of resources, population. Exactly, to map out where hospitals are located. So very important. We live in rural areas where all the hospitals are located. Why are what hospitals have closed in the last few years? Because they're rural areas. Um, Population centers are how certain religious groups are distributed across the country. And what areas are more of one religion than another? Now, geography as an academic study goes all the way back to ancient Greece. Okay, the first structure, the disciplines of geography, and how it is structured in the West. Many early measurements of the Earth and distances were accomplished by the Greeks. That's a couple of important early figures are among those Eratosthenes. Lived from about 275 to 194 BC. Eratosthenes postulated the Earth is round, calculated the Earth's circumference at without benefit of computers or GPS systems or satellites, put it at approximately 24,675 miles. Circumference is all the way around. The modern accepted value is 24,830 miles. Got it more than 99% accurate without computers, without calculators, without satellites, even without modern maps. How do you figure it out? Using the tools they had at hand. For example, they knew that used a lunar eclipse. The Earth's shadow being projected onto the moon. And the curve of this is able to project because he knew, see, They had two fixed points they knew the exact distance of. The distance between Athens and Alexandria, Egypt. They knew the exact distance. And projecting that arc, that piece of the circle onto the shadow of the moon, he's able to calculate it nearly exactly. Simple mathematics. Just have one basic number, the rest is a simple trigonometry. Now the Greeks, and Eratosthenes among them, believe that people are an active element in a relation to nature. Nature doesn't necessarily determine human nature. It is, we are a product of nature in many ways. Nature determines a lot how we live and a lot of our customs and our activities, but it doesn't necessarily shape who or what we are. So we go from one part of the world to another, we're still basically the same person. But Eratosthenes and others believe that geography is important that we study it because we need to understand what is the world around us in terms of distances and so forth, the importance of maps, the importance of understanding natural resources and so forth. Important figure was Strabo. About 64 BC to AD 20. And he helped really kind of give shape to the idea of geography as an academic discipline. I believe that geography, he defined geography as describing the several parts of the inhabited world, to write the assessment of the contours of the world, and to treat differences between countries. It is looking at the political elements of it, where countries are, what the differences between them, looking at the topography of the world, that is the land shapes and land forms, and describing these different land forms. Describe the discipline of geography. Of course, Herodotus was more of a historian, but also he had a lot of important influence on geography too. From 484 to about 425 BC. Historian, he wrote his book, The Persian Wars, and devoted much of it to the lands, the peoples, the economies, and customs of the various parts of the Persian Empire. It wasn't just describing the battles and the political intrigue and the tactics. He's describing the land and the people. And he believed that by describing the land and the people, it helped facilitate understanding the war between the Greeks and the Persians. Is why did certain battles turn out a certain way? Why were certain battles fought in certain areas? And how did they turn out a certain way? Next, they take courses on military tactics, looking at landforms and resources. That is often a major determining factor in which side will win a battle or not. Now, later on, Greek and Roman geographers would map the Earth. They devised a grid of parallels and meridians to try to better define scale and distance. Because initially it's just kind of crude drawings of landforms and shapes of coastlines and so forth and rivers. But they realized to be more accurate, This is the thing about the Greeks and the Romans, especially in academics, they're all about accuracy, or as much as they can get for a technology at the time. That they had to put it on a mathematical scale to try to make everything proportionate instead of just random shapes here and there, but a grid system. What's in this grid? How does it connect up to this grid and that grid? Is there a river here? Yes. Where is it exactly? Here, and it goes through here and there. Giving you more accurate maps. Not the most accurate. You can look at some of these maps of the ancient Greeks and ancient Romans. They're kind of crude by our standards, but they're moving in that direction. Like I said, they just hadn't quite figured out how to accurately measure distance, especially over a large scale, and how to perfect map making techniques. But they're on their way. By the 19th, Renaissance Europe had developed a new interest in geography, particularly as the Europeans start moving out beyond the Mediterranean Sea. They start encountering the New World, all these new continents and lands. They realized they need to have better mapping techniques to map North and South America. To describe these new shipping lanes that are longer, more intricate, they need to have more accurate maps. Make sure nobody got lost. This helped with shipping. This helped with exploration, with military tactics, for political reasons. Because as these new lands are being formed, being discovered and settled, they needed more accurate descriptions of lands, landforms, and descriptions of property boundaries. And so by the 19th century, geography had been established as a respected discipline in Western universities, an important part of any academic education. Now, for a lot of people, most of their education geography comes at the elementary and junior high level. They kind of wrap everything up into the discipline of social studies. But the thing is, social studies, as it's usually practiced in most schools, it really is just a geography course. Learning about different peoples, different civilizations, different religious beliefs, that's a subdiscipline of geography. Learning how to use maps and coordinate systems, that's geography. Learning about resources and landforms and where they're at around the world, that's geography. Now, a couple of subdisciplines here. Now, in geography, there are two major subdivisions of it. First is human geography. Our class is devoted just to that, human geography. Essentially, it's patterns of occupation. The other subdivision is physical geography. Again, a lot of courses devoted just to that. Even the various subdisciplines of these subjects. Physical geography. Physical geography, again, the physical systems of the earth. One of the different subdisciplines of human geography includes political geography. voting patterns, population distribution, political boundaries, and so forth. Political geography. Population geography. Sometimes it's known simply as demographics. Population geography. Cultural geography. Studying different cultures. The beliefs, composition, where they're located, and how they affect other cultures around them. Economic geography. Is simply economics, where major flow of goods and services, flow of money, where the money is, who has it, who doesn't. Historical geography, looking changing patterns of usage over time. Well, mapping out ghost towns. That's part of historical geography. Why did these little communities spring up? Why did they disappear? Where where are these ghost towns located? What is their distance from major principal areas, population areas today, and major transportation systems? So you can even take that even into the history of Union County, Arkansas here. Why was Camden the major city of South Arkansas in the 1800s? Because it was on the river. That was the main means of transportation by water up and down the Ouachita River. But when the railroad comes around, that shifts around a little bit, especially the oil boom here in El Dorado. But 1900, Union County has 2 county seats. That was not unusual for larger sized counties in Arkansas, simply because of the distance. El Dorado and New London. New London doesn't exist anymore. Why? Well, it's just a couple of houses, a Baptist church, and that's it. But there's no settlement, no community, no organization of it. Because El Dorado got the railroad, New London didn't. And everyone wanted to go where the railroad was. Economic opportunity. So therefore, ghost town, semi-ghost town. Health and medical geography. It's not health geography, it's not medical geography, but it's especially important in city planning and public health initiatives. In fact, in universities, sometimes the medical geography course is combined with a public health course. Example, who gets sick? Where are they getting sick? What are the locations of different clinics and doctors and hospitals? Looking at patterns of illness. Especially when you're tracing the spread of diseases, health and medical geography becomes extremely important. And people are tracking the spread of the COVID virus when it first emerged. That's when health and medical geography really came in. They're showing where it's coming in, where did it come from. And for that, you can trace back one person to another, finally to the patient zero, the very first person identified with the disease, the first person who started it. And of course, with medical geography, you start seeing how the environment affects public health. People spend their whole lives living right next door to a oil refinery or chemical plant. They tend to be sicker than others. People who live in large urban cities, they tend to be sicker than people living out in the countryside because of the effects of pollution. Kids growing up in older buildings, for example, may have lead-based paint or asbestos, track patterns of illness that way. So it's a means of determining public health. Maybe one of the most famous examples of medical geography was in the 1830s in London. Huge outbreak of an infectious disease called cholera, it's the Indian cholera epidemic. A million people died worldwide. And doctors and city leaders are trying to figure out, why is the cholera epidemic spreading throughout London? Who's getting it where? So they had a couple people doing studies, identified patients, and identified where do they live. And they noticed that most patients lived within just a couple blocks of a common water pump. Remember, London in the 1830s, you don't have running water. If you need water, you go to a common community pump. Pump your water into that bucket for the day and bring it home. Most people getting sick were from from those same couple of pumps. Where the water supply was contaminated with cholera. They're drinking contaminated water. That's how they figured it out, just simply by mapping it out. Still a process used very widely today. In terms of culture and economics, some of the universities, the graduate schools, they have the geography of tourism. Yeah. An actual course on tourism as a study of geography. Why? Where are people going? They have money to spend, they have somewhere to go. Where are they going? Why are they going there? What major roads do they use to get there? What do they do once they get there? Is it just a day trip there and back? Are they staying somewhere for several days? Because remember, tourism, theme parks, travel, that is billions of dollars to the American economy. And understanding those patterns in communities, why people are going to one community and not the other, why some people are going to one amusement park and not the other, or one side of interest and not another, that's important to city planning. So states, federal government, they pour a ton of money into particular national state parks, local amusement centers, and even help communities plan ahead to make sure they maximize their dollars from tourism. Now, on the flip side here, physical geography. What do we got here? Climatology. Studying the climate. Why are certain weather patterns prominent in some areas? And where are those areas more prominent? Example, Arkansas. Subtropical climate. Very hot and humid summers. Cool winters. Very heavily rainy. But move west 500 miles, 1,000 miles into the middle of the desert. Same latitude, but suddenly New Mexico, Arizona. Very hot summers, but very dry summers. Very mild winters. Almost no precipitation. That's an important part of studying the climate, just what the patterns are. And particularly with global warming and climate change, how these climate patterns are changing are important. because we are noticing more and more all these climate change and temperature change projections made since the 1980s. They were right. The Earth is heating in a particular pattern that is affecting weather patterns. But there's a difference between weather and climate. Climate is the long-term average. Weather is the daily, particular condition of the atmosphere. But we see that. We'll be studying that, of course, very closely, and we get up to that period, at the particular topic. But yeah, climatology. On those lines, meteorology even is a subdiscipline of physical geography. What weather patterns are prominent, where they're changing. Say maps and looking at radar systems, looking how major weather patterns are changing. That's a system of geography. Why does a storm system peter out in a certain area? Why are storm systems moving in a certain direction? Because here we're at here in Arkansas, spring and summer weather patterns, any bad weather is always coming from the west. Always moving from southern Oklahoma, North Texas, along the Red River into our area. Building up steadily along the way. Always does that. Coriolis effect. But why does Arkansas get more wet weather than, say, Dallas? Look at all the systems working together. We're closer to the Gulf of Mexico. We're closer to that warm Gulf air. Dallas is further away from it, so it's drier there. We're seeing how that works. Hydrology. $0.10 word for water. Study of water. Particularly oceans, river systems, lakes, ponds. How are they formed? How do they collect? Where do rivers empty out? So what's the saline levels of the salt levels of rivers that get closer to the ocean and in the particular oceans themselves? Hydrology, extremely important, especially because you look at certain cities, they have certain mineral contents in their water, which can affect plumbing systems. Geomorphology. So geology is a part of this. Looking at geological systems, rocks, minerals, distribution, how they change, how they have been changing over many millennia. Geomorphology. Biogeography. Essentially study the environment, ecosystems. Where are certain types of animals located? Where are certain types of ecosystems located? How do they interact with each other? Help you determine what physical threats might be in an area, but also look at which species may be in danger of extinction. So biogeography. About soils geography. Essentially, dirt. Study of dirt. And that is essential for agriculture. Where are you going to plant the right kind of crops? What kind of soil do these certain crops need? Where is that soil located? Actually, if you ever lived in different areas, you may notice as a kid playing with the dirt that the dirt's colored differently. Here in South Arkansas, we have this thick, rich, very dark soil. But you go out to, say, West Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, kind of a lighter soil, kind of yellowish, sandy, very dry. Georgia, famous red Georgia clay in its dirt. And that affects agriculture patterns, erosion, and so forth, of what crops can be grown, what can be. So overall, physical geography is the study of natural systems, landforms, distribution, topography. And topography just being how the land is shaped, what's there, what isn't, in terms of land masses. Human geography, study of cultural types and distribution, demographics, who the people are, what they're like, what they do, how do they live. Now, of course, all these, you can have a different way of dividing this. One, regional geography. Regional geography, the characteristics of a region. Particularly in any of these terms of soil, terms of wildlife, water patterns, weather, climate, economics, culture, demographics. You can zero in on particular areas, regional geography. Except there are a lot of courses that are just the geography of North America, the geography of Europe, or of Asia. Topical geography. This is what we've got right here. Study of a topic in a particular in various regional contexts. Topical geography. I talked about spatial variation. We also got the idea of spatial patterns. Spatial patterns are essentially your starting points for understanding how people live with and shape the world. Key points to understand about spatial relations, spatial processes, spatial behaviors. We've got to understand about space. Outer space, but Earth space. Among those things, patterns. Places have location, direction, and distance with respect to other places. For example, I can say, I'm here. You're here. What does that mean? Here. What is here? What does here mean? But you can define it, location, in terms of relation to something else. I am 20 feet from you. I am 90 miles from Texarkana. I'm 120 miles from Little Rock. Again, location. But also in terms of direction. Again, we're south of Little Rock. We're east of Texarkana. Um, Location, direction, distances compared to what? For a city of 18,000, we're the biggest city for about 50 miles. So that makes this particular location important. But a city of 18,000, say, middle of Dallas, wouldn't mean anything in how it's used. Place has size, and scale is important. Arkansas is a city of 3 million people. The city of Los Angeles is a city of 4 million people. Again, size, in terms of what you're measuring, so forth. What's going on in Israel right now has been in the news a lot. The Gaza Strip. How big is that? Size is important. In terms of actual size of land area, the Gaza Strip is not much bigger than the city of Little Rock in terms of area. It has 10 times the population. Very densely populated, very heavily urbanized, but again, size, scale. The Sea of Galilee, the Golan Heights, biggest freshwater lake in the region. How big is it? In terms of land area, about the size of Lake Ouachita. Not very big. Three, a place has both physical structure and cultural context. Physical structure and cultural context. That is, can be described in cultural terms, even if devoid of a people and development. Example, we are in a building that is 35 years old. Next day, we've had thousands of students come through here. In the place, the location we're at, physical structure, cultural context. The administration building over here, built in 1905. It has a structure. It has a cultural context. Particularly, it was the first high school in El Dorado. That was the high school building right next door. Used as a high school until the early 1960s, till it moved over to Timberlane Street. In fact, when I first started here, we had a vice president. He liked to joke about how his office was actually his high school English classroom. Place changed quite a bit this time. But a cultural context goes from high school to a college. Or no structure at all. Go way out here into the deep woods. There's no physical building, none built by man, but it still has physical structure. It's a lot of trees around it. Or go out in the middle of the Mojave Desert. Nothing around you for miles and miles, but miles and miles of sand. No structure, except just sand. Structure is noticeable for its absence of structure. Cultural context. Go out here to the deep woods. Yes, there's a cultural context here for the deep south and the woods. It is the many generations of men who worked in the timber industry, cutting down trees, the many generations of men who went out and went out hunting in those woods. Cultural context. The attributes of places develop and change over time. Change over time. Is what is there, what is useful, changes over time. For example, go back to the high school building. It's only built there in 1905. Before there wasn't one. There was a girls' school here at this location in the 1850s, but it shut down. Um, Land was donated to the city to use as to build a new school here, or a high school. So the attributes changed. What once was a high school building is now a college administration building. And the attributes change. Now these attributes can be from a difference of a few hours to millions of years. Um, for example, the 65 million years ago, where we're standing was ocean. Except the land had not formed yet in its present form, but it changed over time. The attributes changed. It's from being beachfront property to landlocked over a process of millions of years. Again, attributes changing. Or change over a matter of hours. Nice building standing over here, catches fire, burns down as ashes. A matter of a couple of hours. The attributes change dramatically. Or some old place is just torn down, a matter of hours. But again, they all have some characteristic, and those characteristics do change. Give you another couple examples here just locally. Where we're standing right now, this was farmland over 100 years ago. West Avenue was the edge of town, the western edge of town. So the attributes changed because of that. The Berkshires out of Northwest Avenue. When I moved here over 20 years ago, it was still Kroger's. Attributes have changed. Ownership changed. So the name changed on it. Elements of places interrelate with other places. And they can do that in all sorts of ways. Okay, we've got an oil refinery over here. So a lot of smoke and steam coming to the smokestack. It's interacting with other areas. The courthouse downtown here. It affects everybody in this county, what goes on in that building. Court cases to decisions by the county quorum court to tax assessment, tax payments, all done in that building. And that all affects everyone within this county. Or look at river systems. Mississippi River starts out from a lake emptying out into the river, into the Mississippi River up in central Minnesota. Those two areas are relating with each other. But from that little water, from that lake up in Minnesota, all the rivers combining into it, eventually empties out into the Gulf of Mexico. So those two, so because the Mississippi River, those two areas, the Gulf of Mexico and Minnesota, are related to each other. They do relate to each other. You remember these attributes, these relationships. Doesn't have to be anything grand and massive and awe-inspiring. Sometimes the differences are big, obvious, and important. Sometimes they mean very little, but they are there. And 6 places may be generalized into regions of similarities and differences. The idea of regions. Similarities and differences. Example, there are all different ways to describe our community. Put in terms of regions, sometimes in relation to what's here or what it's located next to. Here in South Arkansas, we're generally considered the South, generalized into a region based on its relationship, its scale to something, its a location to something else. We are also, since it's a small town, rural America. Areas outside the large cities. Some people also describe in terms of religion, culture. The Bible Belt, very religious area. And places being generalized in specific areas because there's similarities. Or another physical way of regionalizing this area. We're part of what is called the Gulf Coastal Plain. Now, location, direction, distance. So we got in a space. These are always the way you can describe space. All these 6 things right here. But to understand it, though, of course, you got to know, among other things, where it's at. The location, like I said, it does matter. You can have everything else in the world to describe a particular area, but location is what matters. Particularly in terms of why does something have something and doesn't. Just sometimes they're just little anomalies. Why does one little store survive in one area and all the rest of them collapse? For example, I've always heard about the last Blockbuster video location. Once there are thousands across the country, even one here in El Dorado. Those people went streaming and the internet, having everything available online, just no need for them anymore. But there's still one Blockbuster video left in the little town of Bend, Oregon. So why did that one survive? It's an anomaly, but